nectar flow in the Salt Lake Valley has just recently ended, and we're heading into a dearth period. And this beekeeper was concerned about the lack of honey stored in the hive. It's a first-year colony. It started as a package, just a few months ago. First thing to do is check the hive entrance, check the ground in front of the hive, looking for dead bees or bees that can't fly, bees crawling around. Because for a colony that fails to collect their winter stores, the number one reason that would happen is that the colony's sick, disease. But that doesn't seem to be the case here. This looks like a healthy colony from the outside. Bring it up slowly. Don't try not to bang the sides or bang the frame in front of you. Just try to bring it up without hitting anything. This is all about keeping the bees calm. A super seeder cup, you might call it. Not unusual, not a big deal. Just move on from it. Just bring it up slow. There really is no rush. If you do feel rushed, then just close the hive and come back, the next day or whatever. There's a lot of brood on this frame. That looks awesome. In a way, it actually would look better if it was all honey. That's the whole problem, is this colony was not producing honey. Not even enough for them to overwinter on. It's weird. And now the nectar flow has ended, and we don't get much of a flow at all in the fall around here. It's pretty much, that was their opportunity. They won't have another opportunity to collect their winter stores. There's going to be flowers, but there's not going to be enough. Swarm cup down here, pretty sure it's empty. They're not going to swarm at this point in the season, so I don't even worry about it. So why would a healthy, populous colony that has no trouble rearing brood fail to store an adequate amount of honey? I'm not sure I can fully answer that. But consider this. We have looked at honeybees as something kind of mystical. They are livestock, and they have one mission, and that is pollination. That's Dr. Jeffrey Pettis, former lead bee researcher at the USDA. The biggest payday for a commercial beekeeper is almond pollination. And a bee that forages for pollen has a lot more contact with the stigma of the flower than a bee that forages for nectar. In other words, a pollen forager is far more efficient at pollinating almonds than a nectar forager. Not just almonds, but a host of crops, most crops. And, just think about the way that a bee has to access the pollen compared to the nectar. There's going to be a lot more pollination happening when the bee's target is pollen. A pollen forager on almonds will achieve pollination in a single visit over 20% of the time. But if it's a nectar forager, it drops below 5%. In many cases, our queen breeders, our almond growers first. And it turns out that breeding for pollen hoarding is very simple. Honeybees respond well to that type of selection. And it results in a decrease in the number of nectar foragers. So how do we fix this? Suppose we want to add 25 pounds of stores. That's 21 pounds of sugar because 16 or 17% will be water. To store 21 pounds of sugar, you got to feed 31 pounds because it's not going to all end up in the comb. About a third of it will be consumed by the bees. So then we can go to this calculator at iowabees.com/syrup. I like this calculator because it's a weight to weight. Most of them, or many of them, are weight to volume, so be careful of that. It makes a big difference. That calculator tells us 31 pounds of sugar is 17 quarts of 2-to-1 syrup. And if you don't like all the numbers, you can just go to the bottom line. 1 quart of 2-to-1 syrup gives you about 1.5 pounds of stores. It also gives you enough wax to draw out a deep comb. And then 1 gallon of 2-to-1 syrup to fill that comb. To make a jar of 2-to-1, it's real easy. You just fill the jar all the way up with sugar, and then fill it all the way up with water, hot water. From the tap is fine. You don't need to heat it on the stove. And this works with any size container. And if you want to hear more about it, check out my article on my website, beeslc.com, pollen foraging behavior. Thanks for listening.